You really think that we get the society that we deserve?
Exactly. Yeah.
We are what we are.
We are what we are.
And we make it that way by the way that we behave.
Well, capitalism dictates, doesn't it, that it's supply and demand?
No, nothing dictates.
Mm.
We only give power if we allow people to have power over us. It's when we stop and say no, then we become a trouble to any authority or any power.
But that's what I mean. Capitalism and democracy work hand in hand, because capitalism will only work if people will buy the product.
Mm.
It fails, it falls down if people don't buy it. So like you're saying, I'm agreeing with you, as much as I despise the Sun, and I despise these massive supermarkets, I've bought the Sun in the past, and I've shopped at massive supermarkets in the past, so that makes me a hypocrite.
No, it doesn't. That I think would be too strong. What it does mean is that we are easily enticed.
Mm-hmm.
In a kind of spiritual way, the spirit is
apple on a tree, Brian,
and and the flesh is weak.
Mm-hmm.
So we shop where we make benefit for ourselves. We're selfish,
mm-hmm.
and that's the other thing we need to own. We are selfish.
I quite agree. I think that's. I think you sum it up really well there, Brian. The other topic, which has come obviously late in the week, and everyone's surprised at the amount of pages it's taken up in the press, and especially maybe it's because we live in Manchester in the northwest, but on the news in the northwest, Davy Jones, 66 years of age, from the Monkees, has passed away. Died of a heart attack, and I always thought the Monkees were. I knew who they were, and I know a lot of people knew who they were, but I didn't. It's almost as if. Paul McCartney's died or something like that. Fingers crossed. Hopefully he will soon. But you almost say. But I mean, I never realised how popular Davy Jones was. I mean, I'm from Gorton. Karl's from Gorton. There are links between Davy Jones and Gorton. He actually went to the same primary school I did, the same primary school Karl did. So I know that there's going to be a heart link to Davy Jones and the Northwest, but I'm a little bit surprised, like I say, how many column inches it's taken up. But I think he seemed like a nice enough guy. He's never done me any harm personally. I just can't help but think a little bit that the Monkees, without the Monkees, we may not have had S Club 7 and things like that. That's what I'm a bit worried about. Not that it's his fault or anyone else from the Monkees' fault, but I'm not sure really what their testament to humanity is.
Just remember that Humperdinck has just been picked to do the European Song Contest.
Engelbert Humperdinck?
Yes.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's a UK entry.
And he's our chosen one to represent us in the Eurovision Song Contest.
Will he sing with his First World War medals on his chest?
I'd imagine.
Will he sing Release Me and somebody shouts out "Go" at the end?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Please. Oh dear. He's
Oldie Goldies are still going strong, mate.
Well, they reckon that this is a very clever move on the part of the BBC, largely, who are behind the Eurovision Song Contest from this one, that they've actually chosen him. We've no chance of winning in any other way. They're going for the oldie vote. They're going for the geezer vote. And he's very well liked across the world, even in the sort of countries that usually give us nil point.
Well, if they put Cliff Richards on there years ago, then I'm sure we would have won it.
I think they
did, and we didn't.
Really? When? See, I'm not up on Eurovision.
Cliff Richards been on twice.
Yes, he has.
See, I'm not up on it. I'm a heterosexual.
I didn't know that Humperdinck had so popular until Karen mentioned it.
I like the way you use Humperdinck because it makes his name sound not as silly as Engelbert. So it's got to be the worst name. Do you reckon is that his actual real name?
No, I don't think it is.
No,
it's Jerry Dorsey or
Jerry Dorsey.
Something like that is his real name.
But
I know Cliff Richards is Harry Webb.
Yeah. The thing about Engelbert Humperdinck, it's actually the name of a classical composer.
Right.
Wrote the opera Hansel and Gretel, which is.
I thought that was Hansel. No, he wrote the story, didn't he? Hans Christian Andersen. So the opera. Right.
Which is actually the first opera I ever saw. We were taken there by the school, but that was written by Engelbert Humperdinck, and that's where he got the name from.
Wow. Another story this week. If you want to obviously contribute to any of the stories we've discussed so far, if you have anything to say about Davy Jones, if you have anything to say about the Sun on Sunday and the Murdochs, call 0161 660 0545 or email studio@Manchester Radio Online. There's a couple of things that I've found, and there's also one thing that's been sent through to us. So I'll go through them. We'll go through them quite quickly. But one of the things I noticed was this whole thing about stem cells. They reckon that they're going to be able to prolong a woman's fertility up until she dies. They'll be able to do that. So a woman, theoretically, will be able to, there'll be no menopause, women will be able to have children in the 70s, 80s, 90s if they so wish and if they're still breathing. Now, what I thought this would fit in well within our discussion, because obviously we're talking about a change of consciousness, and I always associate a change of consciousness with spirituality, and I always associate it, therefore, by proxy with playing God in a way. And something that we always come back to is where does science, as in the point of trying to find answers, and where does it get to the point where we actually hinder ourselves, like we're talking recently about curing cancer and things like that, is that actually a good thing or a bad thing in the long run? I wanted to ask everyone in the studio now whether they think that things like this, obviously it's going to benefit women who are past a certain age that aren't able to have children, they want to, but is that really a good thing for society? Is it a good thing for the world?
What about the male menopause? It's okay if women can continue to produce.
Are you still hoping to have children, Brian?
Well, depends what they do. If they can resurrect that which is required, if you know what I mean, then why not?
What, put lead in your pencil? Basically. I like that in Life of Brian, where it's they fight for his right to have a child, even though he doesn't have a womb. But yeah, where do you stand on stem cell research in general, Karl? I mean, I know you're not a religious person. So where do you stand politically, emotionally, philosophically on things like stem cells and things like that?
I've always believed that if you've got something like stem cells that can help cure illnesses, then sure, I think you've got to do it. If it'll kind of help people. If it'll help people who have illnesses. I mean, I think you should at least try it and see if you can use it.
Do you have any objections to the idea that it's a fetus that's grown and then discarded just for the sake of some cells? I mean, would you count that as a living being that's been basically thrown in the bin?
I mean that's where I'd stand on the sort of fetus issue, whether it was living or not.
You see, I'm one of the. I mean, it's easy for me to say. I always say that my personal opinions. Don't shoot me down if you disagree. My personal opinions are that I'm personally against abortion, and I'm against things like this. So I don't like the idea of toying with life. I'm not necessarily a religious person, but I just don't like the concept, the idea of treating life as something that can just be thrown away. But then if a loved one of mine, could benefit from stem cell research, I'm sure I'd drag them there myself to get the treatment done. Because we always change our views, don't we? It's like everybody always says they don't believe in the death penalty. You let them say that if their child gets murdered and see if they still have the same opinion.
Could I move this away from spirituality?
Yeah, sure.
I don't see consciousness totally tied up to spirituality, although that too. The more knowledge we have, and the more it enables us to think, we develop a conscious way of relooking at something. So that is not necessarily spiritual; it's knowledgeable, but hopefully that benefits us. Looking at stem cells, politicians can't handle. Not only politicians, we as a society can't handle the people like my age living longer, being fitter, wanting more out of life. We can't afford it. So why, before we answer that question, we actually have to solve this problem before we look at anything which may multiply.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, yeah. So I'm looking at the sort of health implications of people who are already here, type of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've already prolonged life, and we can't handle it. So why are we prolonging life even more?
Again, it makes me sound like a hypocrite, because if it turned out I had a terminal illness, I'd want all the help I could get. But I like to think from a position where I am now, where I'm not, touch wood, that I don't believe that we are doing good by helping people necessarily, simply because I think that nature, dictated for a long time, nature will always control the population to a certain extent. And as soon as you start to meddle with it, and as soon as you start to find cures for everything, what you're doing is you're creating a bigger problem, because we're overpopulated as we are. So as much as I would want anyone that I love and care about to get the best treatment, I think if I'm being objective, things are there for a reason.
Yeah, there's also the argument of stuff being untried and untested, and you're not sure what damage it's actually going to do. Would it cause health implications to a person, somewhere down the line?
Well, moving on, This is something that definitely links to our change of conscience and spirituality. I like to think so, because we always perceive ourselves, everything that we know about history, everything that we know about life and biology, chemistry, anything you can think of comes from within our own little small dot in the whole solar system, our tiny little pinprick of light. And, of course, we're one little dot in a whole ocean of space and time and everything. And one thing that caught my eye, which I thought was fantastic, is that ever since the first ever radio wave in 1895, that signal will still not even be outside of our galaxy. It's only about halfway from where we are to the end of the Milky Way. And when you consider that galaxy is one of an infinite amount of billions and billions of galaxies, it just gives you the whole concept that we talk about looking for life. Effectively, we've looked at if we were looking for a pound coin in our flat, we've looked under the first corner of the rug, and it'd be a massive flat. It'd have to be a whole tower block, basically. And we've not even got anywhere close to the whole idea of how vast the universe really is. And I mean, we've talked about this before, Brian, when we've talked about, when we're talking about God and things like that. And you always say that, to paraphrase you correct me if I'm wrong, but you sort of say, that is the brilliance, that is the amazement, the fantastic beauty of nature, and that to you, instead of moving you away from the idea of God, brings you closer to the idea of God.
Yeah, I think so, because God, we put this word God on something we don't understand, we can't even imagine. It's beyond us. It's beyond the first building block, if you want. So that's in the darkness, and we can't even understand the darkness of our own mind, the unconscious. So how can we fathom that which is billions and billions of much larger than we could ever even imagine?
I know, and it's easy to say because it sounds all very twee and everything, but when you think about your own problems in life, and then you think about that you're one of 7 billion on one tiny little planet in the middle of nowhere, it sort of makes you feel a little bit it can make you feel a little bit insignificant, I suppose. Right, so one last thing that I want to mention. There's a couple of emails that have come through. I'm not really going to have time to mention them, I'm afraid, but I did want to mention John, who's sort of become a bit of an unofficial researcher now, because he's sent loads of things through, and they're all very, very interesting. And I just wanted to basically say thank you, John, for all the stuff you've sent in. So I'm going to read one of these out now, and this is something which is a little bit disturbing, a little bit sad, a little bit depressing, but it's something which I think sums up the time that we're living in. And it's basically about a gentleman who has been found hanged, or hung, no, it's hanged, isn't it? Hanged. A man who had significant worries was found hanging in his home by a neighbour. This is in Burnley. Ken Morfitt told Hearing that 4 years ago his brother had finished work when an accident left him needing a partial amputation of his leg. And neighbour Kevin Might said last time he saw him, he was worried that his benefits had been cut. The cause of death was hanging. Basically, this chap who has been he's been rushed towards this, this assessment that they're bringing through the government, where they're saying whether you really are fit to work or whether you're not fit to work. It includes everyone. It's a total carte blanche system. So what's happened is everybody, even people who've maybe been off with a twinge, and people who've lost an arm, or people who've been at death's door, are being assessed as to whether they're fit to work. And the stress and the fear of this guy being told that he has to go to this meeting, he has to be assessed, and he may have to go back to work even though he's physically disabled in a total serious way, he's actually hung himself, which of course is that a sign of the times? Is that just an individual case? Are we wrong to do that? Is actually the government doing the right thing by trying to curb benefit fraud, things like that? But are they being a little bit heavy-handed? Karl?
I mean, I think they've definitely been a bit heavy-handed with regards to curbing benefit fraud. Because I mean, there were proposals of about whether people were still going through cancer, like sort of cases that there were proposals. Apparently, some of these proposals like cases of terminal cancer with so much long left, about trying to get them to do some work.
Yeah, so imagine though that imagine if you're going through cancer therapy, you're going through radiotherapy, chemotherapy. You've got to sort out a million nurses, you've got to sort out carers, you've got to sort out your family, you've got to sort out your will. Hopefully you'll be better, hopefully you'll get treatment, hopefully you'll come out of it alive. But you've got all these things to worry about. You've got work to worry about, whether you're in work, whether you're out of work, and all of a sudden someone comes along and sends you a letter, says you need to be here on such and such a date for an assessment to see whether you can be forced back into work. Now, obviously, there's a big difference between what we've also seen in the news this week, and I'm going off on a tangent here. I'm a big fan of this idea of what they were talking about, where there was people being paid expenses only. You'll hate me for this, Karl.
I know you're going to hate me. You're heading on the work fair.
Yeah. No, but I'm a big fan of the idea. I think that if you say to someone who's not worked for a long time, you're going to have 8 weeks work experience or 12 weeks work experience. At the end of it, you're going to be offered an interview. You may have a chance of work. I think that's a really, really good thing. I'm in the minority. I know I'm in the minority. I don't think anyone that is relying on the state for handouts should be able to turn around and say, I refuse. I've said for a long, long time that if I was out of work and I'm getting whatever it is, £90 fortnight or whatever it is now, that's what it was years ago, that if they say to me, well, for 90 quid you need to do 12 hours picking up litter in Piccadilly Gardens, I wouldn't have a problem with that because I'm earning my money. I'd have a sense of pride over that. It'd be better than just, literally doing nothing about it. And I've always said that. So I don't see the problem with people, if they're going to get benefits, spending some time getting a bit of work experience. Go on, Karl, riposte.
No, I don't say anything about sense of pride looking for jobs. But the problem is I think Tesco was, for example, was just one of the companies involved. If you're making that much profit a year, and you can have somebody working unpaid, say stacking your shelves, working on your checkouts, then you should be paying them a wage. You should be paying everybody else that works in your supermarket. I don't think there's any excuse for us basically using people.
Yeah, but let's not beat it around the bush. The reason companies are offering people work is because it's cheap labour. Now, so if they give somebody that position for 8 weeks or whatever, and this person turns out to actually love the job and know that, hang on, I could actually earn a reasonable wage from this as well as doing a job that I'm actually enjoying, that might be one less person that's relying on the state.
Yeah, but
so it's a two-way street. So the company's getting cheap labour, right? So that's their incentive. Our incentive is it's one less person being a burden on the taxpayer, and the person's incentive, the individual's incentive, is that they could have a life-changing experience which could change their whole outlook on everything.
When there's already stuff there in employment law anyway, when you normally get taken on, you normally get like an 8 or 12 week trial anyway. Pay them a fair decent wage anyway, and then if he does work after the 4 or 8 weeks, you know basically know where you stand. You can do it under existing systems as it is, without forcing people to do it for basically next to nothing. Right,
Karl, you commie. We've had an email. We've actually had 2 messages through, 2 Ruths. I'm not sure if it's the same Ruth. One Ruth is saying Engelbert Humperdinck is Arnold Dorsey. And we've also had another message, maybe the same Ruth, may not be. I cannot imagine anything more unnatural than a woman having a child at a very late age. Totally unnatural. Also, on the mention of cures for cancer, I believe there is one, but is only available for the few. As it was given to the masses, the government could not afford to keep us. Yes, quite agree there. That's my point entirely, really. And you are right. It wouldn't surprise me if there is something out there, and it is only given to those that can afford it. That wouldn't surprise me one bit. Right, so we're going to listen to a little bit of The Doors, Roadhouse Blues, and then we're going to be right back, and we're going to be continuing our conversation all about change of consciousness. Alan, I'm going to try and respond to your email in a bit, so please bear with me. Okay, the whole topic of the show this evening, of course, is change of consciousness. If you've got any thoughts on what you're about to hear, email studio@manchesterradioonline.com or call 0161 660 0545. But first of all, what I want to do is I want to ask Brian to describe, in his opinion, and this is the way it's been explained to me as well, what he means by change of consciousness. And after we spoke to Brian, we're going to talk to Karl. We're going to ask Bryan Melton if he's got any thoughts on it as well. And then we're going to listen to some interviews that Brian and I recorded last week here in the studio next to the studio, actually broadcasting from this evening. So Brian, let's start off. What would you describe the whole concept of the change of consciousness as?
I try to make it as simple as I can. For me, it's a change of an idea. When you have an idea of a subject and somebody gives you a bit more input into that, your idea changes, so your horizon broadens from a small understanding to a larger understanding. And for me, that is a change of consciousness. That means that if there are 3 people in the room, and one person has a wider concept with the experience they've had, and the other 3 have not, there's somebody who could speak broadly about a subject and give a wider understanding to somebody who's got a narrow understanding. So I think what we're having now is a multiple a situation where there are multiple ideas of what the world is and should be, of who we are, and that is causing a bit of a difficulty because we are living in a much more open-minded, educated world where there's a great amount of information available through technology.
But as we become more open-minded, as you say, and technology advances to such great extents, we're also seeing a mix of cultures. I'm not going to go off on a big tangent about this, don't worry. We're also seeing a mix of cultures which we've never had before, which I think, as we take one step forward, we're taking 2 steps back, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to not only force ideas together, we're trying to force concepts and communities and cultures together, and we are sort of missing the grip or the tread on the tyre, so to speak, to use an analogy. We're not getting the traction that we would be getting because we're being held back by some outdated ideas and outdated concepts, which may be holding us back a little bit. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but that's life.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the Luddites, what they did to those who wanted to work. So we've always had that, except now that we're having not just 1 or 2, we're having a multiplicity.
Multiplicitous?
Yes, something like
that.
Of that kind, that it makes it more difficult. So the more we have, the more difficult it is to control.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're in that process of trying to work that out.
Mm-hmm. You see, Karl, you're an individual that's, from a young age, we were discussing it earlier, has always been sort of searching for answers. You've never looked at the world and accepted it as this is how it is. You've always questioned why it is the way it is. So I'm interested in what your thoughts are. Do you believe that? See, for me, it feels strange that I've been born into this time. You know, I know everyone's thought that. Everyone's thought that throughout history. Everyone's thought, why me? Why now? You know, going through the Crusades, going through the Black Death, things like that. But we really do now seem to be at a make or break point. You know, we're running out of natural resources. We've got nuclear weapons. We've got a population which is growing outside of its boundaries, and it does seem like if things don't change, then we're all screwed. And it's all about talking about politics. It's all talking about religion, but it's something more inherent than that. It's something that we need to get a grip on. I know, like Paul's show on Wednesday, the Critical Mass show, 9 to 11, he tends to look at things from a political perspective. And obviously through politics, through breaking down politicians and through taking power ourselves, that's how we can look at change. I'm trying to look at it from a different angle. I don't want to go into his territory too much. I'm looking at it from a spiritual consciousness way, as Brian says. What do you think? How do you feel that your experiences have been as somebody who looks from the outside in? What kind of world do you perceive?
I mean, I'd like to. I mean, the sort of world I believe in, I'd like to see would be like a sort of collective thing where everybody kind of, the old idea of everybody kind of working together for the common good. I mean, what there seems to be this clash between the concept of individualism versus collectivism, because on the one hand you've got saying, oh, we're all in this together, the idea of a whole sense of community, but on the other hand you've got the idea of everybody sort of make their own money and, you know, totally separate lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's how it is. And we started off by saying basically we're all selfish. We are selfish human beings, and the thing we seek is happiness. The thing we seek is love. The thing we seek not only to love somebody, but to be loved by someone, to be appreciated. That gives us who we are and gives us happiness. The other things we actually need to survive. And I think that rather than I do understand when you use spiritual in terms of spiritual God and things like that, and I can say amen to that, but often people don't understand that language. So when we talk about spiritual, it's people may not understand what that might mean. So we have to renegotiate so many things in order for us to come to a common understanding. And I think that's a new phase. I think it's an exciting phase because that's what we have to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, so how far you go between the self-collective and the individual and where you draw the line.
And are we going to be brave enough to say, like in the animal kingdom, if a child or a human being is no longer able to be productive, let them die? Are we? Is that civilization?
Well, it's suited nature for millions and millions of years, and then we've come along and all of a sudden decided to try and play it by our own rules, because we seem to think that we're more important and we're more valuable than any other living creature, which I've never understood. I've never understood why humans value themselves so much and so importantly. I mean, you know, we live and we die just like any other creature, and it just seems that the intelligence that we're gifted with, we sort of do it. We use it to, obviously, and this makes sense. We, like any creature, instinctively wants to protect itself and look after itself. But what we do is we go so far to that aim that we don't take into effect the bigger picture and the effect that we have on the environment and everyone else around us. Where, you know, an animal that goes out to hunt for food doesn't really think about, well, if I go and eat this, I'm going to destroy someone at the other end of the world. We know we do that. We know that when we overconsume, that we're potentially starving thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, but we do it anyway. Okay. We know that when we come up with a cure for something, that we may cause overpopulation problems down the line, which wipe us all out, but we do it anyway.
That's our change of consciousness. Mm-hmm. What you're speaking about now is a consciousness which was not around 50 or 60 years ago. Because 50 or 60 years ago, we would be planning for this, thinking that if you provide full employment, you provide a house, you provide this and that, you've got happiness. Mm-hmm. Our consciousness now is to say that that does not do it. So we have to rethink the whole lot. So if we're talking about a change of consciousness, it's a change of developing ideas to lead us through into the 21st, 22nd century.
You see, I'd like to ask Bryan Melton what he thinks about the whole global idea, community idea of a change of consciousness. But I'd also like to ask him on an interpersonal level as an individual, because I think this also works, as we're going to see in the interviews that we'll listen to soon, is that change of consciousness is not necessarily a global thing. It's a personal thing. It's a personal achievement. It's a personal race, basically, from the finishing from the big start line to the finish line. It's all about change of consciousness, how we look at ourselves, how we appreciate ourselves, how we believe that we can change, and how we believe that we can better ourselves. And I wanted to ask Bryan on this because obviously you weren't always an actor, but you've always been creative, haven't you? You've always been, you know, we've talked about your poetry before. I've got the booklet. You're going to give us a poem at the end, aren't you? You're going to do us Mad Dogs and Englishmen, famous Noel Coward poem. Is it a poem or was it part of a play?
It came from, I think it came from a play. I can't actually remember now. I know that Coward wrote it on a trip in the tropics, in a sort of 3-day car trip, and he wrote it all in his head.
Wasn't he friends with the guy that wrote James Bond?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. Was a friend of Fleming's. And,
and they used to spend a lot of time in the Caribbean, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, there's a number of stories about Noel Coward. I'm a great fan of Noel Coward, in fact. And what I'm going to do later is actually a parody. It isn't. I'm not going to do Mad Dogs and Englishmen as Coward wrote it. It's a sort of a modern take, a change of consciousness, if you like, a view of something slightly different, but using the same. Using that as a base at least, and so I love parody. It's one of my one of the things I do love to write when I can. So we'll come back on that. Change of I mean, I've had a change of conscience forced on me. I didn't used to do what I do. I had a well-paid job, had certain responsibilities, and suddenly I lost it partly through ill health, and now I've got to do what I can. And we were talking about the the benefit system. I don't actually qualify for benefits. Having paid my dues all my life for the last 40 years, I suddenly found that no thank you, you don't. When I was made unemployed, no thank you, you don't qualify for any benefit. It wouldn't have mattered because I've got a very strong work ethic, and so my change of conscience. Okay, how am I going to deal with my life? I've always wanted to do something creative, so I've started down that road. But at the end of the day, I've also got to make a living. So I do 12-hour shifts in washing up in a restaurant on minimum wage, and at the end of the day, after I've paid tax, I come out at about £5 an hour. So to make anything decent living wage, I've got to do about a 60-hour week. Otherwise, you just don't come out with you don't come out with enough money. Don't always get 60 hours, so it's it's a bit hard going. But that was my change of consciousness. I can't go on living the way that I was living on the many thousands of pounds that I was earning. I'm now lucky if I earn £100 a week. I know 1 week through the summer for a week's work I came out with £48, and that didn't pay any bills. Fortunately, my wife works and I've got other income, but £48 still meant that I couldn't pay bills at the end of the day, and that was for a week's work because they just weren't giving me any hours. Come in for a 6-hour shift. Oh, we're not busy. Go home. 2 hours work. You earn £10. And so I've had to change my view of life. I mean, my view of life was always good. I could spend money right, left, and centre because I got a good wage coming in. It didn't matter if I ran up a bit of credit because I could pay it off. And suddenly, I found I couldn't pay it off, and I just hadn't got the money coming in to do it.
So are we going full circle, Brian? Because I was always told about Brian M. By the way, I was always told that during the 30s and 40s, just like in the film On the Waterfront, that in Salford Docks, if you wanted a day's work, you went there. The strongest guy would get to the front of the queue, hopefully to get the work. The people that maybe had a bad hand would hide it behind the back, desperate to just get a little bit of work. And only 65, 70 years later, we're getting to the stage again where people are turning up for a day's work and they're being turned away because, we haven't got the work for you. So have we really progressed? The dressing around everything seems to be better. We seem to look at things as like, this is much better than it was then. I don't really think it is.
And the more things change, the more they remain the same. And that's this is true. La change. It is true, and I don't think we have advanced. Certain people have made a lot of money, but then 100 years ago, 200 years ago, certain people were making an awful lot of money, and little boys were being shoved up chimneys. And no, we haven't changed. Society hasn't really changed. We just have this facade, this different view of it again. We're going back to change of consciousness.
I think that comes back, if you come back to a spiritual, religious bonding, is that one of the good things about religion is it teaches us responsibility. But the bad thing about religion is once it's dogmatized, it imprisons us. So my change of consciousness on that level is that although I'm a priest, I cannot go and preach, not because I'm not allowed to, but I can't go and preach dogma which imprisons people. I have to try and tease people out of the stagnation of believing in something which is not helping them to grow. If that makes sense.
No, of course it does. Stuart in Wigan's saying that we had our chance, we were given the opportunity, and we blew it, and it serves us right. And when the world ends in this coming December, we'll all understand where we've gone wrong. I don't think he's actually being religious. I think he's maybe a little bit facetious there. But thank you anyway, Stuart. These are some that we are going to.
The world is going to end, but I think the system, the way we are governed, will end. Yeah,
definitely, and that's something we are going to cover. Actually, the whole thing about the end of the world and the whole mind prophecies, is that actually linked, as Brian believes and as I'm starting to believe, is that linked not to the end of the world but the end of our current values. People were talking 50 years ago about the age of Aquarius, about effectively what we're talking about, a whole new astrological concepts. I mean, astrology not in the way that you read Jonathan Cain in the Mail and say, I'm going to win the lottery. I'm talking more to do with alignments, things like that, which is something we'll try and come back to actually. But just to recap, so far on the Watershed, we've looked at the week's news. We've looked at the Murdochs. We've looked at Davy Jones. We've had a discussion on that. And then we've been talking about our main topic, which has been all to do with a change of consciousness, be it on a global level, be it on a personal level, be it on a community level. How can we change things? How can we change our way of thinking? What do we need to do if we are to carry on this planet? Is it our time up? Have we evolved to destroy ourselves? Or is it just a new epoch, a new beginning for us? These are the kind of things that we're going to be discussing. So if you want to join in, as usual, email studio@manchesterradioonline.com or call 0161 660 0545. Now, it is my pleasure to give you an interview conducted by Brian Branche on the streets of Frankfurt. So please listen and enjoy.
Brian Branche, I'm in Frankfurt. I've just come across some posters on Iran, and I'm speaking to...
to Sirius Kamrava.
What's going on here?
Our action is against human rights violation in Iran. So we are supporting the action, the gathering of mourning mothers in Tehran who are gathering every week in a park in Tehran and protesting against the human rights violation.
Yeah. And how strong is the protest? It's here in Frankfurt. Is it linked up with other protests?
We are at about 10 people who come here every week, and we do public relations.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
How do you see that going? Because there's a lot of confused thinking coming. There's a lot of change going on in the world.
Yeah, I think that Iran expecting this change too,
yes.
Because the regime of Iran is governing only with violence, and so the people of Iran are not supporting the government anymore.
So this seems to be a awakening of the people in general, that they're not going to be dictated to by power and money, but they want to be listened to and have their human rights.
Yeah, I think that Iranian people want a democracy. Yeah, so it doesn't take a long time that we will have see changes in Iran too, like other countries in the region. Yeah.
And do you think democracy will, because the Middle East is exploding with democracy, wanting that?
Yeah.
Do you think that that's going to be a solution to the human problem of living together?
I think it is not an absolute solution. It is not from today to tomorrow, but it is a relative solution. It means that it is better than a dictatorship.
Thank you for talking to me.
Right, that was Brian there in Frankfurt, talking to an Iranian demonstrator. We're going to listen to Guns N' Roses, Paradise City right now, and then we're going to be coming back and we'll be discussing a change of consciousness further.
There's something about Manchester, home of Metrolink, the UK's first modern street rail operating system.
Manchester Radio Online is brought to you by Amicus Computers. ManchesterRadioOnline.com. Add us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Manchester Radio Online.
Right, you're back with the Watershed. We want your opinions and your thoughts. 0161 660 0545 or email studio@manchesterradioonline.com. Email from Lindsay saying that after spending 15 years working in a retail store, she's now a fully qualified lawyer. And that's after 7 years of education, so that's her change of consciousness on a personal level, as we were talking about. I wanted to ask Brian, obviously we're talking about the gentleman from Iran, Brian Branche. Just tell us a little bit about what was going on there at that event, because we've also got another interview. We're going to listen to a gentleman called Luke Slater that you also managed to pick up in Frankfurt. So just tell us what was going on at the time.
Okay, I was just walking the streets of Frankfurt, really.
As you do.
As I do. And I had my recorder with me, which I deliberately took, to see if there was any interesting stories. And I saw these posters of Iran and this small group standing there. And I just went up and said, "What are you doing? And do you mind if I give you an interview to explain why you want to do this and and is there? I mentioned the change of consciousness that's taking place, and he latched onto it. So the same with the other two interviews, if we get it on. It was both. One was a teacher, and the other one was an American who was sitting by is it the Bundesbank?
Yeah, I believe so. We've got the teacher one, but I need to do a bit of editing on that, I think.
On the teacher one.
But we have got that for future shows. But I was going to ask Karl, I've been of a political mindset. I know you're not a religious person, but it's always been. I'm starting to sound like a Bible basher, right? But it's always been prophesied. It's a bit creepy. It's a bit eerie that the crux of civilization would be the point from which civilization would end. Of course, we've got Iran, like Brian was talking to the gentleman there in Frankfurt. We've got the Ahmadinejad, whatever he's called. He wants to wipe Israel off the map. We've got Israel, which has been funded by the Americans for years. We've got Palestine on the doorstep. If there was going to be a collapsing house of cards, so to speak, like we had in the First World War, and that was going to happen now, we'd all be wiped out. Let's face it, because as soon as Iran gets involved, Israel gets involved, Palestine,
North Korea,
North Korea is going to get involved, China's getting involved. It's a horrible, terrible thought to even contemplate. So I wanted to know what your thoughts are when we're talking about a global change of consciousness, things like that. How do you think we've got time to sort of cool down this melting pot of thousands of years of cultures who are at each other's throats continuously and have been for a long, long time, and they've also got nuclear weapons as part of their arsenal? Is it too late, or is there something that can still be done?
I mean, I think the key would be trying to get people talking, but the problem is that many different cultures and ideologies and basically theories on things clashing. I think they're probably going to have to be compromises made somewhere along the line. It's a question of whether if we ever say Ahmadinejad in Iran had compromise, or I think it's Netanyahu who was in charge over in Israel, whether he would. And you've got people like Hamas and in Palestine. I think it's got to be compromises somewhere along the line, but we've got many different sort of ideologies all trying to fuse together and get what we want out of everything. Because then if they don't, it will come all crashing down like a house of cards. Without
opening up something which is a whole other show, which would take another 2 hours to talk about, very briefly, do you believe that the foundation of Israel was compensation for what the Jewish race or Jewish people had suffered during World War II, or is it purely coincidental that they're on the doorstep of the massive oil reserves?
I'll probably go with you first, with the first one about it. I think it was to a large degree compensation for for the really sort of heinous atrocities suffered in World War II. We looked at what Hitler had done and thought, there's always been this argument, about creating the homeland in that area. We better do something to at least kind of show we care, I think.
So if the Jews had come from an area where there was no oil reserves or anything like that, it still would have happened. All that money would have been invested, and all that time, and all the risk of disrupting thousands of other people that have been living there for generations, all that would have still happened.
Whether it would have still happened, but whether plenty of money could be made out of it is a whole different thing. It probably wouldn't have.
That's just a benefit, just a lucky bonus.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Well, I think that looking at oil, that's only become a recent place to, because of what we need for transport and everything else like that. And that's why Falklands now is becoming another point, because it's oil. And if it wasn't for oil, we wouldn't be having a rerun of the conflict, I don't think.
Well, I think Meryl Streep knew that in the 80s when she sent over all those people to no, because
she'd love to claim it.
No, because let's face it. I mean, there was no way we would have gone to. I don't think we would have gone to war with that. I do support the 2,000 people that live there that want to remain under British rule. I support their right for that. But I don't believe the British government, which won't look after its own people that live in the UK, are going to send over all those warships just because they want to look after their own people. I think it's more of a case of they definitely knew there was a tactical reason.
Well,
and a financial
the tactical reason was that Margaret Thatcher wanted to win the next election.
Yeah, definitely.
And
because
that really was, had she needed something to increase her popularity or bring back her popularity. Look at the sinking of the Belgrano, which may or may not have been going in the opposite direction. But I think the political decision was taken to sink that ship to make Margaret Thatcher look like the new Winston Churchill.
Oh yeah, because with the economic policies, I think she was at the time. I think she was probably one. I think all polls, she was one of the most probably unpopular prime ministers up to that point.
Yeah,
and I think they thought even though Michael Foot was probably, I mean, nice man, but probably shouldn't have been leader of a major political party. You know, I just think the sort of skills he had were kind of good to get involved with, say, helping with something, but maybe not kind of leading the charge type of thing.
He would have been a great MP and a great
and a great cabinet minister, which he did actually turn out to be under Callaghan.
Was John Smith the best prime minister we never had?
Yes.
Yeah, but I actually think he probably would still have won by a landslide. Maybe not as much as what Blair did, because. But, I was going to say, but I've seen a way. I've never seen a way he annihilated Major on PMQs every session.
I don't think that means that much, Karl. I mean, the fact is that I don't think the UK would have been ready for what they saw as the Labour Party. Don't forget, most people in this country read either the Mail or the Sun. And unfortunately, I think people would have already drawn the conclusions that it was.
I still think it would. Yeah.
It needed to be New Labour to win.
I think it would have been a big majority, but not as big as the Blair one.
Well, I think John Smith would have created New Labour. I think.
I mean, from the stuff I've read, I don't think Smith would ever have gone that far.
No, I don't think he would have gone as far. But I think the Labour Party under Smith would have been a different animal to that which you saw under Kinnock and Foot. Certainly, and a more electable animal.
Well, that of course brings us to the whole concept of change of consciousness when it comes to politics, because I don't believe there's ever going to be a change while we keep electing the same people, and I don't think there's much relevance really. I think that maybe the 80s was the last chance we had of, we had these diametrically opposed parties, and I think ever since then they've all learnt that really if they all want to share power like they do now, you've got Lib Dems and Tories sharing power. And I think Labour deliberately lost the last election because they didn't want to have to put up with what's going on now, and they didn't want to take the blame because they know that they'll get in straight away afterwards, after everyone's had the cuts and everything.
I think the problem was probably certain tactical mistakes probably lost over the last election. But.
No, I think they knew when they let Gordon Brown take charge that it'd be.
Well, I think a mistake he made was he should have gone when the opinion polls were all going for him. I think that's a mistake he made.
Definitely.
I think the thing with Gordon Brown is that it's what I call the John Major syndrome, and it backfired on the Tories. John Major was elected to be the next leader of the Tory party, or the next loser, or the loser of the next election, should I say? And it backfired on them a little bit.
Yeah, they were expecting him to.
They were expecting him to lose, and for exactly the same reason that then the new right would come through and.
Because in the '92 election, it was. I actually read Major's memoirs, and he basically sort of delayed Maastricht with ratification of Maastricht, thinking, thinking, I'll get it done after '92, but he didn't realise you'd get a Eurosceptic intake. One of them being Ian Duncan Smith, basically signed block. This kind of cooperation.
I agree with Tom. I think Gordon Brown. Well, Gordon Brown wasn't really elected; he was crowned.
Yeah.
But I think he certainly was intended to be the leader who would lose the next election.
Because there's
and he duly obliged.
Yeah, of course. Right. Well, talking of Europe, as you were in Maastricht, let's go back to Frankfurt. That was smooth, wasn't it? That was very smooth. Right. This is an interview that Brian conducted with a young chap called Luke Slater. So again. Listen out for this. Again, we do hear the words change of consciousness, and the relevance, as you will hear, is coming up now. So enjoy.
My name's Luke Slater, and this, what you've come across, is the Occupy Frankfurt camp. It's been going on since the 15th of October. It's the same, many of the same ideas from the global movement Occupy. I mean, this is why we're here, because of Occupy Wall Street. Because of the call for people to come to action, to protest, to say we've had enough of the way that the government's running some of the things right now and things like that. So this is why we're here, camped out. And you see at the stark contrast between two different places. I mean, in Germany, and I'm from Canada, so I mean, it's quite good. There's not too much poverty. People are doing all right, but then you go to other places, poorer nations, and you see they don't have enough food. And in the richer nations, we're making money by speculating on prices of food, and it just doesn't make sense to me. And I think people are realizing. I mean, that's one example, but people are realizing what's happening in the world and saying, maybe this isn't right for everyone. It's nice for us, but we should really start thinking more on a global scale. I mean, in the past there's been ways to connect with people, but now with all the technology, with the internet, it's so easy to see exactly what's going on, to see videos, eyewitness accounts of the corruption, and seeing exactly what the problem is, almost real time, saying, all right, we see it, we know there's a problem, everyone can be involved, it can be shown on YouTube and millions of people will see it and say, I want to take action, I want to do something about this as well. I mean, that's just one other way for people to kind of gain consciousness of the world around them, that it's so connected that it's very easy. Greed in that sense is becoming a little bit of a thing of the past, because when people decide they want change, it's very easy now with so many social tools that you can connect with people that you say, we don't like this system anymore, it's got to go, and then you can easily overthrow. I mean, I'm not going to say easy, but I mean it's easy to organize something. This 2012 thing, the idea that we're actually becoming into a higher consciousness state of mind in this year. I mean, the way that things are going, it seems like people are becoming more aware, but there have been movements of the past similar, and maybe not exactly the same and not such a widespread scale. But I don't want to call it too early, but I mean that's what I would hope as well, that this is really a...
We've had things before, but what has the two big major things have been kind of questioned: communism, and the wall came down, and capitalism, with the collapse of capital. So there's a money wall coming down, and it's easy to knock a cement or a brick wall down.
Yeah.
But when you start to knock a money wall down, you're actually hitting people right in their belly.
Exactly. I mean, it's such a real thing to actually destroy someone, to actually take away the power, and since money control, you gain power with money. You can actually see people struggling to hold on to, slowly put the money back, or make that wall stronger, or reinforce it. But it's collapsing at the seams, and I don't think it's like a dam. A couple leaks, it's going to get a little bit bigger over time, and it's going to collapse at some point.
So how strong do you feel here the support is?
In Frankfurt on a global scale, or...
Well, look at Frankfurt, and then we'll look at the global scale, because I know in St. Paul's in London, the same thing's happening. But I was surprised to see it here.
Yeah, okay.
Because Germany's got the strong economy.
Well, yeah. I guess this is one thing. But the support from the people, I think, is tremendous. I mean, you see all kinds of different groups coming out here just saying, yeah, we're with you. We know what you're doing here, and we support the cause 100%. Like, they come with donations of food, of time, of money. I mean, anything that they can do, many people will do to help and say, or just saying, we're with you. They come over and say, yeah, we really like what you're doing here, and support it. I mean, there's even members of banks, large banks, that say, yeah, you know what, we're sick of it too, we see it, and we're with you as well. So I think it's quite exciting.
Thank you for your time. So, thank you.
Not a problem.
There we had Brian again in Frankfurt, talking to Luke Slater. And some of the things that he brought up there, which we're going to be asking the people in the studio, he brought up things like, revolution through technology. We had the Arab Spring. We're having it, it's continuing now all the time. Something that Paul's talked about on his show, on the Critical Mass show on Wednesdays, is that governments are going to be taking that away from people if they get continuously threatened by things like YouTube and iPhones, where we can spread technology so quickly. Are they going to find ways of taking it away from society? Now that's an important question that we need to ask ourselves, because democracy is only democracy when it suits the people that hand it out. That's what I believe. So we're right back in the studio now. We're going to be asking the guests what they thought and what they think about this change of consciousness. So, chaps, well, do you want to start with Brian, actually? I mean, like he did mention there like the revolutions that are going on around the world, and how people are looking for this change. Because he also mentioned 2012 and things like that, and he's talking about this change that it's bringing about. Sort of like what we were touching on before, where I think it was Stuart was saying, he believes, I think he was being flippant, but he believes that it's the end of the world's coming and things like that. But do you think that again, we all seem to be in tune? It's not just Arab Spring. It seems to be people in Canada, people throughout Europe, all seem to be waking up at the same time. And listening to the interviews there, the ones in Iran and the other one the one from Iran and the other interview in Frankfurt there, obviously about capitalism, world banks, things like that. What are your thoughts? I mean, is this an opportunity now? Do you see the world financial crisis as an opportunity for people to change their views, or do you see it as perhaps boom and bust, which we all seem to fall privy to, and then as soon as it all works out, we're all going to then sort of forget about it all and just get back to spending money as we always did?
I mean, I think the opportunity is definitely there for people to change society for the better. I mean, there seems to be a bit of energy all coming at the same time when you've got like the Arab Spring, the people rising up against Iran. There's the thing in Syria as well. Mm-hmm. There seems to be an energy for people to change things, but I mean, the question is, will it evolve? Will it evolve into like a massive societal change, or like you said, will it get brushed under the carpet? I mean, I think it'll be harder to, stop the technology sort of spreading ideas because you've got the there's like the anti-hackers thing, isn't there, where people are hacking and exposing, sort of government systems and things. Mm-hmm. So I think it'll be harder to stop it technology-wise, but it's a case of will these movements go out of steam as some have done in the past, or will people use the sort of a momentum, the energy there to create something better?
Well, what I was going to say is, of course, we had the Wall Street crash in 1929. The only solution for that was World War II. A lot of people have always argued that was something that was sort of, set up a little bit because it was one way of getting the world out of the mess it was in. And we're also now being told all the time that we're looking at the axis of evil. Iran keeps being mentioned. Is that another way for us to go to war so that we can maybe give the world economy a kickstart? I don't know. Brendan's been in touch. Brendan says that it's just a natural progression of societies coming to an end. It's happened in Roman times, Egyptian times, Greek times, and this is just our decline as the Western civilization, and it's time now for the Chinese and Eastern societies to have their opportunity to run in the world. And yeah, I suppose you're right there, Brendan. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so Brian M., do you have any thoughts in particular on things that we're talking about, like capitalism, the world crash? Is it an opportunity for people to change, or is it merely just the same old cycle that we've gone through many, many times?
I think it is the same. It is the same cycle. There's always the opportunity there as well. I think one thing you said was quite important. This is a revolution. It's a revolution being brought about by information and information technology. And whilst I agree with what Brian and the speaker said about it being difficult to stop, you can bet one thing: governments are going to try.
Yeah,
they are going. Once their position becomes threatened by it, they will do their damnedest to see that it doesn't happen. I remember when there was the debate about CB radio. Does anybody remember CB radio? I think there was a debate in the House of Lords where a senior member of the House of Lords said something like it was undesirable for people to be able to be in instant communication with each other. I mean, he must have shit himself when he heard the telephone ring, but that's but that's another story. And I think the establishment does take that view, and the establishment is threatened by this, and they will respond. And it does happen. It happens in countries like China. They control the internet. Syria, it's controlled. It's forbidden, and you won't see it overnight. It'll be progressive. There'll be another hacking scandal, perhaps, which threatens national security, and therefore we must take this particular action to stop that. And little bit by bit, our own personal freedoms, if you like, will be gnawed away at until suddenly they're gone, and we won't even notice.
I think that I hope that view doesn't uphold, because that means that the people who have the power still have enough knowledge to stop.
The thing is, the people who have the power have enough money to buy the knowledge, and that I think that is the I think that's the crucial thing behind it. They will find ways, or they will try. Now, not necessarily say they will succeed, but they will try. Control of information.
If they could get away with shutting down the internet, if it wasn't for the fact that so many trillions of dollars and pounds circulate via the internet now, if they could get away with shutting it down, they would. Most definitely.
Yeah.
But I think the only reason they don't is, as I say, because too much relies on it.
Yeah. My hope is that they too will change in this process. In any dialogue, both parties should change, and all that change should do to move you a step further down the line of hopefully looking for a better way of doing things.
So it's not just a change of conscience, it's a change of nature.
I think, yeah, I'd boil all those things together. Conscience isn't something which exists on its own. It's a part of us, it's a part of nature. And I think nature itself self-regulates. There's something, the energy there balances somewhere along this line, but it may cause a tsunami, it may cause an earthquake, and it may take lives. But it then settles into something different.
No, I quite agree. But it's I can't foresee a world, to be honest, Brian, and I hope I'm wrong. I can't foresee a world where people that have power are gonna give it back. I can't see that. Not through choice.
I don't think they'll do it through choice. It may amount to revolution in the end. I think we're a long way. We've started that process, but I would say, just as you've got civil unrest in Iran, we may see that globally.
Yeah, and I'm afraid you're right on that one. And one of the big things that I think about a lot is, we talk about shortages of oil and things. Engineering and technology is coming up with ways all the time. Like we were talking the other week on the show about cars that run off air pressure. They came up with a car a few years ago that Tata, the people that do the very economical cars in India, came up with a prototype which worked functionally, where you'd be able to fill your car up for pence. It's all about air pressure. And of course that's not come to market. We know why, because the people who own the oil companies won't let that happen. But we have got ingenious ways of fighting against things like that. But what we don't have ways of combating is things like where the sea levels rise so much that we don't have any drinkable water left. And it's all right worrying about oil and worrying about how we're going to fill our cars. What do we do when we can't drink? What do we do when there's no food because everything's been polluted by salt water? How do we deal with that?
The fittest will survive.
And it won't be the humans. And it won't be the humans.
And it's not necessarily the richest.
No. But that's it. I mean, again, to go back, that would be quite ironic, wouldn't it? Especially in a secular age like this, for us all to be done over by a big flood. So that's all I've got to say on it. Right. Okay. God, yeah, I must be having an epiphany or something, me. Some kind of religious mania. Anyway, right, so talking of that, how good is this for a segue? What a brilliant track to move into. A little bit of R.E.M., Losing My Religion. R.E.M. there, Losing My Religion. Quite an apt song to finish that last link with. So just while that music was playing, we were just talking to Brian. We were talking amongst ourselves, as we like to do. And one thing that came up, of course, we always return to is religion. Not necessarily religion as it's read out in a book, but this search we have for answers, basically. And one question that came out of it, one question I'm going to repeat for you to hear now, is how many changes of consciousness have occurred that we know of over the last few thousand years? Of course, we don't always have a written testimony. We've got oral histories that tell us that such and such happened, and so on and so forth. So can you describe some events that you believe were either successful or an unsuccessful or temporarily successful changes of consciousness throughout society?
Well, I suppose if we take the Christian era and the teachings of Jesus, which has led to the West adopting the kind of 10 Commandments in the way of formulation into law looking at that's what civilization means. But every time there is a change of consciousness, we will always, people with power or people with intellect or whatever we want, with money, will try to utilize that for their own benefit. That always happens. So the rich uses power. And what I was saying about was transfiguration, of change of consciousness in the transfiguration story in the Gospels, where Jesus is on the mountain with Peter, James and John, and he is transfigured, he is transformed. And they witness this. So their consciousness has been changed. They can't come back and be the same people. Just as Brian M. was saying, that once you start something and you move, you can't go back to where you were. You've moved forward. And therefore, when these three wanted to say, let's be on here, let's build ourselves a booth, let's build this as a shrine. And Jesus puts them off by saying, no, you don't build a shrine, you take this information, transformation, whatever, and you go down and you work it out in the valley, down where the people are. And so that's what we should be doing. Mm-hmm. But every time people gain that consciousness, there is always the temptation of creating it into a shrine, whether it be Lord's or whatever. And that inhibits people, I think, anyway.
No, I quite agree. And Brian M., can you think of any examples that you believe were maybe opportunities for a change? So, see, the first thing that springs to mind for me is the end of the Second World War. You know, we'd had over 30 years of conflict, one way or another. Millions and millions and millions died. We had it televised for the first time, where people saw the horrors for themselves. We had all this documentation, we had photographs and everything, and especially countries like UK, I believe, had the best intentions with the welfare state, things like that, and it was a genuine opportunity to try and look after and care for each other, and not necessarily look at from the top down, but from everybody, everyone on an equal footing. That's my best example of when we had the chance and we blew it. I think we blew it. But can you think of any examples?
I think actually that is a very good example. I think the end of the First World War did give us that the Second World War did give us that opportunity, and I think we went through an age, and again it's the sort of age of my childhood. I was born about 6 years after the end of the war, and we were going through the birth of the welfare state almost, and we had an era. At that time we had a Tory government, but it was this real one nation conservatism, mm-hmm. and that I think people could equate to. It didn't matter, but we lost it. We lost it, and we went through. We came through then into the age of Thatcher, and there is no such thing as society, and at that point we begin to lose our way, I think. But Harold Macmillan, for example, was I think the last real one nation conservative prime minister. Perhaps Ted Heath to some degree. But once you had this, you had this real change of consciousness with the election of Margaret Thatcher, because there was this political change, this political sea change almost, that things moved. We'll say to the right, because that's a convenient way of expressing it, and the whole nature of society changed at that point, and this greed and this me, and this rampant consumerism came out of that. And at this point, we're now paying the penalty for that.
See, talking of Thatcher, I'd like to bring Karl in predictably, but talking of Thatcher, I would say, you'll probably disagree with this, I would say that she saved us economically, but did she kill us emotionally? Did she kill us spiritually? Did she take away what the last vestiges of what Britain was when she said, as Brian pointed out, there is no such thing as society?
Oh yeah, and without a doubt, she kind of took all our weight, because I mean, like you said, probably the best opportunity was probably just after the Second World War, when personally I thought that Britain's greatest ever Prime Minister was it Clement Attlee. Yeah, I personally disagree. A lot of people go for Churchill. I'm probably one of a few exceptions. would probably go for Attlee. I mean, I think
let's not forget as well that Winston Churchill, after the Second World War, was the odds-on favourite to win the election. And of course, Clement Attlee did win.
I'm accusing Labour of being like a Gestapo in the election campaign, but we didn't help. But anyway, but I mean, the force was there. If I'm going off reading sort of history, so remember, I don't even think the NHS was probably. I don't even know if that was in the manifesto, but
well, it was in Ewan Bevan, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was and Ian Bevan was the health minister, and he basically sort of pushed it through.
Trafford General, the first. Yeah,
he kind of pushed it with force of will. I mean, he had battles with BMA. He had to allow some form of private healthcare in the end to get it through. But I mean, the idea was, I mean, sort of going back to the idea. The idea basically, the chance was there to to make it all collective. And then so by the end of it, I think it was an economic crisis then where we had to basically devalue, and then it kind of started a career towards the end of it, which kind of become a downfall of government. But there was the argument over should you put money on basically teeth and dentistry and spectacles, which led Nye Bevan, Harold Wills saying it was John Freeman to resign from the cabinet, or should you spend it towards the defence as sort of Hugh Gaitskell did when he was Chancellor.
Have you been reading the Andrew Marr book, History of the 20th Century?
Yeah, I've read the Marr one, but I've also read the biography of Nye Bevan that Michael Foot did as well.
No, because that Marr book's fantastic.
The Marr one is really good.
But one thing that I'd want to ask the studio, and then what I want to do is ask Brian to read his parody of Mad Dogs and Englishmen. One thing I wanted to ask the studio is this: is after World War II, when we'd spent the equivalent of trillions and trillions, we'd spent 6 years building weapons. We had no economy effectively. We had a war economy. We couldn't really import and export. We had embargoes all around the English Channel. Yet we came out of it. We were able to nationalise industry after industry. We formed the National Health Service, which was the envy of the world. We still managed to, we brought in a proper welfare state. We brought in a pension system, things like that. Can we really turn around now and say that due to a few years of blowing money on a few credit cards and things like that, that we're all screwed? Because if we can come out of that healthy, and we can come out of that and have boom after boom after boom, surely, down to a few bankers and them, getting a little bit harebrained, we're not in that much of a mess. Surely we can come out of this.
I think that if you hold a picture, that when human beings are in conflict, then there's trouble, we join together. Families unite often when there's a threat against them. What we haven't, as human beings, been able to do is to live when there's peace.
Mm-hmm.
So does that say something about us as human beings? We need conflict to actually develop personality and all those other things.
Mm-hmm.
And if so, maybe the change of consciousness that we may need to find is how do we live peacefully? And that will be a new way for human beings to actually be.
Well, as usual, Brian, I couldn't agree more. So, Brian M., would you like to get yourself as close to that mic as possible? You're in for a treat now, listeners. Brian is going to give us one of his readings. So, whenever you're ready.
Well, this is with real apologies to the master, Noel Coward.
I don't think he'd mind.
I don't think he would. I think he would love this, actually. It's Mad Dogs and Englishmen. In foreign climes, they take the times, they say. For the natives all admire the prose style and the fire, and the editorial has that certain way of ignoring high adultery and the sort of things the tabloids have to say. The popular press is more or less just pap. In fact, it's positively, definitely crap. But Mad Dogs and Englishmen go out and they buy the sun. In Egypt all the farces use it to wipe their arses, and being hot they only squat until the job is done, but the Englishmen will rest there and fester. In the Philippines there are lovely teens who are reading Thackeray's Fair, and in the States they're reading Yeats, all the Brontes and Voltaire. Sad that we only have page 3 with a load of tits and bums, but Mad Dogs and Englishmen go out and they buy the sun. Mad Dogs and Englishmen go out and they buy the sun. The toughest Burmese bandit reads Keats and understands it, and in Rangoon reading Lorna Doone is their idea of fun, and they'll regularly barter for Sartre. In the jungle town they'll wear a frown if you've not read Shaw Green, and they love the bard so they find it hard that our papers are obscene. And in Bangkok they talk of puck and bottoms never bum, but mad dogs and Englishmen go out and they buy the sun. Mad dogs and Englishmen go out and they buy the sun. The smallest Malay rabbit has got the reading habit, and in Hong Kong they ponder long on the plays what Shakespeare done, and have we all been taken by Bacon. In the mangrove swamp and with all due pomp they read Burns as the Scots would do. Even caraboos stand around in queues in the library at the zoo. And in Bengal with Gibbon's Fall they have such frightful fun. But mad dogs and Englishmen go out and they buy the sun. Mad dogs and Englishmen go out and they buy the sun.
Outstanding, Brian, as usual. Wonderful. Right, so to have a little bit of a quick roundup. We've been talking all about the change of consciousness this evening. We've been talking about whether it's a personal thing, whether it's a community thing, whether it's a global thing. We've heard interviews conducted by Brian on the streets of Frankfurt. We've talked about Iran. We've talked about the Arab Spring. We've talked about the financial crisis. We've gone by ways of that. We've talked about what opportunities we had to change the world in the past. Did we live up to that, or did we fail ourselves? Have we taken every opportunity that's ever come our way and just thrown it to one side? Do we have one more opportunity to do it? Is it our last chance before we all nuke each other and wipe ourselves off the face of the earth? Would that necessarily be such a bad thing? So what we're going to do is we're going to wind it up tonight. I want to thank Karl. I want to thank Brian M, Brian B. I also want to thank the other guests in the studio that didn't speak but have been observing Riley. So have a great weekend, and this is Nirvana, the man who sold the world, and as soon as this finishes, you're in for a real treat. You've got an interview conducted last week by Brian and myself with, this is Sophie Wright and Daniel Clark. Of course, anyone that listens to Manchester Radio Line on a Sunday will know Sophie from the Sunday Supplement, and also Daniel Clark is a budding musician, part of the band Death to the Strange. So listen out for that, have a great weekend, and we'll see you again next Friday.
26th of February 2012, Juicy Bridge, and we've got with us Sophie Wright. Hello, hostess of the Sunday Supplement.
Sunday Supplement, hostess, I like
Sunday
that.
Supplement. We've also got Daniel.
Let's think for a second then.
AKA Clark, from Death to the Strange.
Are you Clark with an E or without?
With an E.
We're probably related.
Oh.
And his girlfriend, he's lost the voice as well. Partially lost the voice. Becky.
Sophie.
Yes.
If I can come to you.
Okay.
What makes you tick?
What makes me tick? I love Starbucks. I love sushi. I love shopping, and I love driving in my car on a sunny day with my favourite songs really loud. Yeah, dead fast, and the windows down because I've not got a soft top. And going for coffee with my friends, going out for dinner.
You don't drink, do you?
No. So I'm teetotal, and I love dancing. I dance on a Saturday night in Suede nightclub, and I buzz off that. I love that.
Have you ever danced solo, Brian?
I love dancing.
Just freestyle.
I'm so
yeah.
Freestyle.
Yeah, just interpret the music.
Dancing is a celebration of music.
Yeah, exactly. So I would have to say
one of the best statements that I've ever heard ever. Like, dancing is a celebration of music. Music's one of the biggest parts of our lives.
See, I'm
dancing. You need to celebrate the music by dancing.
I can't dance to save my life.
Do we celebrate enough?
No.
I don't believe we do. As English people, definitely.
What's gone wrong? What's gone wrong with Merry England? Where's it gone?
We're all trying to be too well behaved, aren't we?
Yeah.
And PC.
Probably something to do with the government. I don't really understand it, to be honest.
What can you do about it, Daniel?
Well, I try my best to write music, what people can get into.
There seem to be a lot of talented people that come to this pub. I'm a southern stranger who's just been introduced to... Is it Juicy Brucey?
Juicy Brucey.
Juicy Brucey.
I like
it. Brian is a regular guest on my show, by the way. Brian's got his own...
No, I've not heard the sign-on song, but I'm going to check it out.
It goes ding 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 ding. It's like a little skiffle tune.
It's like if George Formby was around in 2012, that's what it sounded like.
Oh. They say the times are rough, there's no jobs, they've had enough of signing on. Week to week, they'd rather have the job they seek. Any job will do for me, so I can come home to my tea and darling wife. 14 kids and a car to drive. But I know it's not for me. I'd rather rise and watch TV, those funny faces on the screen. The best thing I've ever seen, a big fat bag of smelly green. Skip-a-piddly-dee-ba-ba-dee, the social buy a nice supply when all is well and getting high.
Daniel, just fine.
Yeah!
And the chorus goes, sign on, you've never had so much fun.
I like it.
Oh, it's brilliant, really catchy.
It's controversial.
What's your end game? What do you want to achieve?
I don't know.
Higher job seekers.
Yeah, personal as a musician.
As a person. Because
I just want to be happy at the end of the day, that's, yeah.
person and musician, you must be rolled into one. Because your music comes out from who you are, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Who
definitely.
are you?
Who am I? Good question.
Put you on the spot. Put you on the spot.
I love you. You're a good character.
What's
so
you,
who
as well?
are you?
You just asked me a question. You said, "Who are you?" Like,
Who do you
can't,
see?
you can't answer that, can you? Like, who are you?
Let's ask Sophie. Let's ask
Who
Sophie.
am I?
Who are you?
We all have a picture of who we are in our mind. What's your picture?
I'm like a pink bird that just flits around the place. And I do tend to live in my own little bubble. And a lot of people say, oh, when do you plan on coming back to the real world, Miss Wright? And I say, I don't. I much prefer it where I am.
Do you lay any eggs?
I lay eggs wherever I go, leaving a little trail of Sophiness wherever I have been.
Cool.
AKA the Sophie Sparkle.
That's,
You can see where I've been.
that is great.
Not in a like a dog fouling kind of way. Not like, oh, you can see where she's been. You know, you can see where I've been because there's a little bit of me left there.
Let me try a Brian question.
Okay.
Where does this inner light come from, this sunshine? Because you are a very sunshiny person.
Yeah, I think it's how I've been brought up because my mum is madder than I am, and quite often I feel like I have to tell her to behave herself, and the two of us are like two peas in a pod, and she's very sunshiny. My dad's a very quiet man because he can't get a word in edgeways between the two of us, so I think it probably comes from my mum and a positive upbringing, and been fortunate enough to have a happy childhood, and they still support me in whatever I choose to do, really. So I think that's why I don't have an inner sadness. I have an inner happiness.
See, I think if everybody was positive, though,
Well, I think that's great. How do you respond, Daniel?
I'm not going
Give
to
us the
respond.
beat
It's all right.
and make sure you're sweet. Put your pedals on the street.
I think that's great, and I have to say the same myself. I had a great upbringing. My mum and dad are still together, and
Yeah, same.
my mum's got a lot to say. My dad doesn't.
Would you say that upbringing has a lot to do with who you are?
We're going nature
Yes.
and nurture now. Nature versus nurture.
Definitely.
Big time, big time. Like, it worries me now that kids are playing on iPads and like little Game Boy, Nintendo DS thingies, whereas when I was 7, I didn't play on my dad's iPhone.
Played on the Super Nintendo.
No, I had a colouring book and an imagination.
Fair enough.
No, but I was saying to a few years ago to a girlfriend, saying about like if we ever had kids, would you want the kids to be watching TV? And she was like, yeah, of course, TV is good. And I'm like, well, no, I don't think it is. I think conversation, talking to a child. I think it's a brilliant thing for the kids to ask you questions, you to give them answers. I don't think it's great that you get so many kids that punch in front of a TV and they're just told, they're brought up by the TV. And this big thing now, and being a bit controversial now, but this whole thing about ADHD and things, we talk about all this. I've spoke to someone in the past who said that I've got a kid who's got ADHD. He's always playing up. The only way to solve it is to put him in front of the Xbox. Yeah. Now, to me, that's probably the root of the problem. That's probably the cause of it. Because it's attention deficit disorder, isn't it? What about conversation? What about love? And what about the child knowing that his mum and dad, care about him? Or...
I don't think you should deprive a child from television or computer games or.
Why is it deprivation? Or why are you depriving them?
I grew up on computer games, but I must admit, like the computer games these days is a lot different from like Super Mario World, like fighting and war and I suppose you're right. Like they know the names of the guns and everything.
Yeah.
You see, I love Grand Theft Auto. I mean, I'm a big kid. I love playing computer games.
Yeah.
But you think like Grand Theft Auto, there's some people
Not
parents who let their kids play it.
I know.
And you can one of the things you can do is go with a prostitute, then rob the prostitute of the money and the money she's already made, and that's it. That's what you do, and there's no consequences, and there's, nothing else.
This man, I love him. He's not streetwise. He's such an innocent little lady.
I think we've not actually put the nail on the head. Like I think that the modern world is changing, isn't it? Like drastically.
Have you noticed the big change in your life? No, I'm following along.
Oh, is it? I just think.
Explain that, because I think that's important.
It's very important, isn't it? Like, 100 years ago, electricity didn't even exist, and like we survived for thousands and thousands, and I don't even know how many years. Like before that, all of a sudden, electricity has been put on this earth, and now I don't know. As soon as a kid's born, it's like everyone wants them to be an adult. All of a sudden, like difference between
childhood is died basically.
I quite agree.
I think because my mum's a primary school teacher, and she finds it terrifying because she's teaching like year 6 who are 10 and 11, and whereas when I was 10 and 11, I wasn't very streetwise, and I didn't see a lot of the things that kids nowadays are seeing, either sadly at home or on the TV, or we're all go through different things. And she says it's scary how kids now, there seems to be no childhood. They're just expecting to go straight into teens and adults.
Even as a toddler, like the parents are trying to dress them as adults, like as soon as they're born. Like,
I've seen little kids, little girls with like hot chicken stuff. And,
I know.
It's sad, isn't
There
it?
is Pierce when they're like.
No, actually, you sound like a load of old fogies.
Yeah, we do.
You're not old.
No.
So
I'm 22.
Now you sound, and how old are you, Daniel?
26.
And I'm 74.
Are
you
you?
sound like me.
Don't look
it. 74. This is madness. I do speak to God every now and again.
Does you ever answer?
I know what you mean.
I can't even believe I'm talking about this.
It's not like a booming voice. It might be something that just comes in your head and you think, well, that's not my thought. That's like someone else's word or phrase or picture that's just come into my head. That's not my thinking.
No,
that's someone else that's put it there.
I think the opposite. I think like when I think I'm speaking to God, maybe I'm talking to myself.
Well, maybe that is God.
Yeah, and I think like everyone's got a piece of God inside, and it's whether you use it or not.